Welcome to From Guilt to Good, Self-Care Solutions for Busy Caregivers, the podcast rewriting the narrative of self-care. If you're a caregiver feeling stretched thin, torn between responsibilities, and longing for self-care, then you are in the right place. I'm Jeanette Yates, a fellow caregiver and someone who spent years doing all the self-care things and never really feeling any better. After years of research, self-exploration, and trial and error, I finally found a way to create sustainable self-care practices that make me feel good, not guilty. And in From Guilt to Good, we'll explore how you can do that too. Together, we'll hear expert insights, actionable steps, and heartfelt stories to guide you toward rediscovering your worth, reclaiming your health, and getting back the life you've been too busy to enjoy. And today, I am so honored to welcome one of my new friends and fellow self-care coach, Danielle Taylor, the self-care mom coach on Instagram. She is we met recently. We're both doing a mindfulness teacher training, and we just were like, "You're a self-care coach. I'm a self-care coach. Let's hang out." So, Danielle, it is so great to have you on the podcast today. And I want you to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit more about how you got into being a self-care coach for moms and some of the things that light you up, girl.
So I'm Danielle. I'm a self-care coach for moms, and I became a self-care coach after I struggled in silence with parenting, with motherhood, with my self-esteem. And I found that so many moms out there are struggling and hiding it and feeling alone. And I realized after I healed, I realized it really was my mission and purpose in life to empower and support all moms in all stages of life to know that they are loved by loving themselves first and caring for themselves first. And that is how they show it. And that is the most amazing, most important work that you could ever do.
And one of the things that you have on repeat on your channel, and one of the things that I know, I was like, this is why we're going to be best friends, is because I say it on my channel too, you are enough. As caregivers, as moms, as busy women, we often feel like we're not enough. And sometimes that's our own inner narrative. Sometimes people are straight up telling us that. It just depends. But we have to know, and that's one of the things that we both teach inside our programs and our coaching, is that we help caregivers, women, feel and remember that they are enough. There's nothing else you need to do to be enough other than to just know it and remind yourself of it. So I love that that's part of your words that you share, but also part of what you believe. And so,
and truly that knowing you're enough is by starting to be aware of how you feel, how you talk about yourself, how you talk to yourself, and how you take in what other people tell you. And that is how you learn to be enough. And truly self-care, and I say it all the time, is so much more than getting your hair, your nails done. It's a feeling. You are worthy. You are enough. And nobody else can give you that feeling besides you.
That's right.
And so that is the most important work you could ever do, is working on yourself, for yourself, loving yourself, and being the best version of yourself so you can give.
Well, and I love that you say, you talked about like the things that we can do for self-care. None of that is going to matter if we don't believe that we deserve it. And so you and I, we both love a good massage, love a facial, love all those things. No shame. No, we love it. We're there.
Do you.
But one of the things that I found was a big shift for me is I don't do those things so that I will feel better. I do those things because I feel good about myself. And I think that's the big difference.
A reward. Yes. Sorry. It shouldn't be a reward. Right?
Yeah.
It should be what it is, because we all deserve it. And so I think that is a big shift from doing these things to feel good to I already feel good and I'm doing these things because I'm worthy, I am enough, and I deserve it. Right?
Yeah, exactly. And so anything can be self-care, but nothing's going to be self-care if we don't think we deserve it, if we don't believe that we are enough. Now, interestingly enough, speaking of enough, one of the reasons I wanted to have you on the podcast is you actually have a kind of an interesting caregiving experience where, parenting is its own type of caregiving, obviously. But one of the things I learned about you and us getting to know each other is that you have like a professional caregiving hat that you wear sometimes. So talk to us a little bit about your caregiving experience from the professional side.
So I am a registered nurse. It was actually a second career for almost 20 years. My first career was in psychology, women's studies, and research of anxiety. But my career as a nurse is in cardiac, in ICU, and heart transplant and heart failure. And it's so interesting that you are the self-care giver coach, because as a nurse, we are directly at the bedside with families.
Right.
And with families of very sick patients who are there for long periods of time. And from my experience, most of the time, the family wants to be there all the time at the sacrifice of their own well-being.
Right. And that is why I wanted to have you here, because everyone's saying, well, I know that like when everything is fine, I will have time to take care of myself. But well, in some cases, nothing is ever fine. So that's one issue. But then there are those times too, where it's like, oh, but this is a big crisis. I need to be right there because this is a crisis and this is really hard. And so I've got to be right there because, whatever reasons. And so I wanted you to speak to that caregiver that's like, but I have to be here because they're in ICU or they're in the cardiac, I have to be here. What are you seeing happen to caregivers that don't pay attention to when their body is saying, take a break, go to get some, go get some food at the cafeteria?
Oh yeah. And you know what? It's a holistic care, right? As nurses, we are treating the whole family.
Right.
We're treating the whole dynamic. And what I see is complete and utter burnout. Family members who haven't changed their clothes for days, who are not eating. And you know what? We're there. And I never lie to my families. I always say, we're here right now.
Right.
We can do it all. You need to rest up, because once you go home, this is what you're going to be doing.
Right.
And if you don't rest now, you're not going to have the energy for when your family member goes home. And we truly are not judging you for leaving.
Right.
We want you to go rest up and care for yourself.
Right. And it's not,
you need to.
Right. And as someone who has spent my fair share of time, I haven't spent too much time in the cardiac units, but the ICU, girl, I've been there so many times in the last 5 years. I can tell you that every doctor, every nurse, every specialist that comes in, once they tell me what they need to tell me for the, whatever decisions need to be made, they're like, okay, that's all that's going to happen today. Nothing else is going to happen that you need to be here for.
And the truth is that we want your family member to rest. They need to rest. And when you are there constantly, it's an anxiety on both parts, right? Because you want to tend to their needs when really what they need is probably quiet and rest. And we are there, right? But also the family member might feel that they need to do something when they need that rest. And we're only a phone call away, right? And how many times, we are there, the nurses station, we will talk to you, help you, whatever you need. And we truly, as nurses, believe that family members need to fill their tank. In any capacity that you need to do it, go home and take care of you. And don't feel guilty about it.
A lot of times caregivers are worried about leaving, not because they don't want to leave, but they feel they're going to be judged by the medical team. So by the nurses, by the doctors. They don't want to be perceived as bad caregivers. And so I wanted you to talk a little bit to that myth that nurses are talking bad about
so I would say,
the caregiver.
Yeah, sorry. I would say it's actually the exact opposite.
Yeah.
It's the exact opposite. Family members sometimes create a lot of stress and anxiety in the situation because, of course, it's you don't understand everything that's going on, right? And you don't, and that's okay.
I'm laughing because I know it's like, what is that? What is that noise? What is that? What are you doing?
So you're creating this energy right? That's
Yeah.
high anxiety, and that is not a healing energy. So
Right.
as nurses, we're like, we got this. We're there. This is our passion. Like, we became nurses because we have a passion for helping people, right?
Yes.
So we're going to be there. We're going to do it. We're going to bathe your family. We're going to talk to them. We're going to,
Right.
whatever they need. And it's a team effort, right? You work as a team in the hospital, and truly never feel bad. It's like the opposite. We're like, go home, go,
Right.
right?
And we don't want to, as caregivers, it's like, but they don't know every little thing about my loved one. And that can be hard. And I know my mom has, interesting conditions and whatnot, but I feel like there's only so much as a family member you can do anyway. And the doctors are trained and the nurses are trained to know how to figure out the next thing. And so once you've given them the basic information, they know how to figure it out. That's why they went to the schools. That's why they have all the education.
But I'm going to say one thing that I think is a really excellent idea for all caregivers. Have a notebook. Have a notebook that you can leave at the bedside or make copies. We love to really understand the whole patient, right?
Yes.
So there's things about your family member that you really want the staff to know. Have a notebook of like treatments or this or that, or things that they like or don't like. We as nurses love information. We love data. We love to really see the whole picture because that's how we're trained. So we are never going to be angry if you have something written down and you have copies. We're like, give it to us. Let us have it. So that also takes the anxiety off, right? That is self-care.
And another thing, and then another thing that a notebook does is, if you're only telling, because you want to give that information to the nurse or the CNAs or, the doctor, but then another doctor comes on or another nurse comes on and you feel like, oh, I hope they know. Well, if you have the notebook, well, first of all, they give reports. So they're going to tell the person,
we always give
so there is a little communication.
Yes.
And they, and some of that stuff goes in the chart, but those little odds and ends, what they like to be called, what they like on TV. Like I remember when my mom was still like out of it on the ventilator, they were like, we'll turn the TV on. What kind of stuff does she like? And, I'm like, well, she likes true crime. So watch out. Yeah, right. Yeah. So anyway, so, there are those things that are helpful, but a notebook is a great way to make sure that like, okay, if shift change happens and I'm not here, I did have the capacity. This is another thing. I had the capacity to be able to get up there for shift change most days, but there are some people that can't, or if they've done it for a couple days, they need to take a break and not go one day. That's when that notebook can be helpful. That's when that information can be helpful. So I love that you said that. But, what I wanted you to be able to tell our audience, our listeners, our watchers, hey, YouTubers, is that, when your loved one is in the hospital, and we're talking about like serious conditions here, but, because that's our experience, but, sometimes they're just in the hospital for, regular old stuff, or whatever. When they're under that care of the professionals, after you've given the information, spoken to the people, given the notebook, use that opportunity while they have that 24-hour situation to go take care of yourself.
Go home.
I have a friend. Yeah. I have a friend who, they were, her and her family were taking care of the mother-in-law. And when the mother-in-law would go to the hospital, and then she would usually have to go to some sort of transitional care for a little bit, they would get her checked in, make her feel as at home as possible, communicate, and then they would go to Disney World. They would get out of town because they knew as soon as she came back home, they were going to be 24/7 and, 24/7 care. So they, as hard as it was to leave sometimes, and sometimes we'd have to just do it because it's good for us, even if we don't feel good about it at the time. It's going to make us better caregivers when we have to turn that switch back on. And like you said, the phone is there. We have a lot of technology now that allows us to be in constant communication. So it's much easier to do.
And definitely the one thing is that we will never get angry at the same time. Like if you want to help your family member get bathed or washed up or be there for them and so there's this weird shift of self-care giving in the hospital, right? Where you don't know what you're supposed to be doing. You don't know what you're not supposed to be doing. And is the nurse going to get mad at you for that? Right? We will never get mad if you need help and ask for help and say, I don't know if I'm doing this right. Like even helping your mom go to the bathroom, right?
Right.
Use that call bell. Ask those questions. The best thing you could say is, I'm not comfortable or I want to do it. And never feel guilty or bad about it, because the best thing that you could do is communicate. Communicate how you need help, what you need, and if you need a break. We are nurses. You say like, I'm struggling here. We're here we do the whole family, right? We do everybody. So if you say you're struggling, we're going to say, you know what? Let's talk and then go home and take a break. We're here for everybody, and never feel bad or guilty for saying you need help. And I think that's really important as a caregiver to know we are always there to talk, to ask questions, to feel those feelings, and we're there for you.
I love that you said that, because we do want to make it clear. It's not wrong to stay. It's not wrong to go. It's not wrong to come and go and come and go.
Right. Truly.
It's not wrong to talk to the nurses or not talk to the but now you are saying the more you communicate, the better as a caregiver.
Yes.
But there's no judgment there. There's no room for judgment. There's no time for judgment.
No.
So what we both want to advocate as people who are advocates of women taking care of themselves is for you to consider yourself as one of the people that needs to be cared for in that situation.
Yes.
That's what we're saying.
Yes. You are part of what nurses think as you are also getting the care, right? That is the way we view our patients. They are not only the one in the bed, they are the family member at the bedside. We are there for you also, and there's no wrong way to do it. And I think that's what you have to give yourself as a caregiver: grace, gratitude, and there's no mistake. There's no wrong way. It's a learning experience every time you go into the hospital. And as a nurse, we're saying, give yourself, don't punish yourself. Care for yourself, and don't look at it as a learning experience, and there's no wrong way. Because you're new at it. We do this all day, every day, 24/7, And so I hope that this helps somebody to know that as a nurse, we're saying there's no wrong way. Everybody makes mistakes. Everybody learns and grows. And that is part of caring for a loved one who is in the hospital.
Yeah. Well, I love that you shared that. And like I said, I think sometimes it's good for us to ask the professionals, like, what do y'all see in caregiving, and what do y'all see and hear from caregivers? And it sounds like, you see a lot of burnout. You see a lot of people afraid to do the wrong thing. And you're just giving us that grace and that vision of, hey, let's just work together. Let's communicate, and then know that it's okay for you to take a break. We've got this, and we're happy to have you come back whenever. There's not this right or wrong.
One thing I want to say before we go. So I find that a lot of caregivers, so sometimes when your loved one comes at a certain time, there's certain things that we have to do and we don't let you in, right? Or when they're transitioning. And a lot of caregivers feel upset about that, think maybe they did something wrong, but truly we are getting your family member, your friends, who you're caretaking settled. Or maybe, and it needs to be a moment that as we're working, we're there with them. And so just know that it has nothing to do with you or what you did. And I think that's so important, because I found so many people that come aren't let in right away, and they're thinking that something's going on, but truly a lot of times it's just we're doing something at that time, or we're getting your family member settled.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot of administrative, technical things that happen, things plugged in and all moved around and sticky things all over. And like it's just faster and a little bit safer when the professionals can get in there. I know that I've done it so much that I know what's happening, but one of the things that I do appreciate from in the facilities I've been in is they always send someone out to say the team is working, this is what's happening, um, there's no emergency, we're just doing these things, we'll be able to come take you back soon. So like you said, communication is really helpful.
Communication.
Yeah, yeah. Well, Danielle, I wanted to thank you for coming. And this is just a very, I know that it's going to mean a lot to hear from someone who's in that on the professional side. Just speak to us caregivers and say, we got it, it's okay. And
We
just
got
give
it.
us a little pat on the back. That so I do appreciate. Is there any other encouragement or insight that you want to share with these caregivers, these moms, these sandwich generation, as we like to call ourselves, that are trying to do both? Is there anything else you want to share with them today?
I would say always care for yourself first and tend to your needs, because to be the best version of yourself, caregiving is a really tough job in whatever capacity. And if it's a family member, moms are caregivers, and we truly need to fill our tank to be the best version of ourselves, for ourselves, but also for that family member. And filling that tank and not feeling guilty about it can be really difficult. And if you are struggling with it, there is no harm in seeking help or seeking a coach, because there's no stigma. It's the stigma is how you feel, but it's empowerment to reach out and get that help.
No, we could go on about this because I know. And come see us on Instagram, y'all, because we are on there all the time and we talk all the time. We can do lives and stuff to talk more about this, because one of the things, and probably from the professional side, you may be more aware of this as well, is there's this whole bunch of research being done now. And that's next time you come on, we're going to have you on again, Danielle. We're going to talk about research. We're going to talk about,
I can go. I love data. I love data and research. Give me a good research study. I will break it down for y'all.
Yeah. So, but I have seen some research that's come out about caregivers getting sick and not being able to care for their loved one. And that's what we're talking about. We're not talking about like, oh, you've packed on a few pounds, or, you're tired and need a bath. It's like, that's the immediate, like, that's kind of like, maybe what's going on that you're feeling maybe personally as a caregiver. But what we're talking about is the self-care that's going to sustain you and keep you healthy, not just so that you can be a caregiver, but definitely that's part of it.
I have a story before we go.
Okay,
so my mom is a caregiver. My aunt is mentally disabled. And when my grandparents died, my mom is her guardian. And recently, my mom is getting run down. She's in her 80s. She could use the self-caregiver. But she went into the hospital with my aunt, and she was already run down, and she wore a mask. And guess what? She got so super sick after she came home, and she could not shake it.
Yeah.
And that is the exact story of why you need to care for yourself. Because when you're so run down and burnt out, your immune system is run down and burnt out and can't fight off anything. And that is a huge reason to care for yourself first.
Exactly. And so both of us are advocates that you don't have to care for yourself so that you can be a better caregiver, mom, whatever. But, we want you to care for yourself because you're a human and a woman, and you deserve to love yourself and care for yourself and tend to yourself as a person. But the result of that is that you become a more effective parent, a more effective caregiver, a better friend, a partner, all those things. And so, but just know that in this caregiving space, we're talking about, you don't want to leave your loved one because they're sick, whether it's sick at home or sick in the hospital. But if you're not able to take care of your basic needs and take care of yourself, then you run the risk of not being able to be around them because you're sick. And that's what we don't want to happen. So you've been so helpful, and thank you for relieving all of our stress about what the nurses are saying about us caregivers, as that we know that y'all are on our side and the side of our loved one. And I thank you so much for joining me today. I appreciate you. And for those people who want to touch base with you, you're at the Self-Care Mom Coach on Instagram. Is that your website too?
So I'm theselfcaremom.coach.
Okay, gotcha.
Yes.
Gotcha. I'll put that in the show notes. Mm-hmm.
Yes. And I have a website, www.nourishlifewithdanielle.com. I'm also getting on YouTube, Nourished with Danielle. I do group coaching, one-to-one coaching, and I am doing workshops live and virtual, and some more things to come. Yeah,
we're working on the mindfulness teacher training.
Love it. And I know we're so excited incorporating that. I think it's so important for everything to be mindful.
both of us talk about self-awareness, like being aware, and that mindfulness piece is so important to that. So that's definitely something we're excited about for both of our programs. So thank you for joining me today, and thank you for listening and watching. From Guilt to Good podcast is a proud member of the Whole Care Podcast Network. To access additional self-care resources that help you feel good, not guilty, check out the show notes or head to theselfcaregiver.com. I'll also put any resources that we mentioned here in the show notes or description on YouTube as well. Subscribe now and join me in going from guilt to good as you rediscover your worth, reclaim your health, and get back the life you've been too busy to enjoy. And if you've enjoyed this show, please take a moment to leave us a review. Your feedback matters. We're redefining self-care for caregivers one episode at a time. And until next time, remember, you are worthy of the same care you give others. Thank you.